and it can be just as effective. So fear is a choice. Fear is a choice you made. And since you made that choice, you have learned how to use your fear to maybe make you make a change that would really be a helpful change in your life, right? Like you said, some situation you felt fear and you thought it was helpful to you, right? Isn't that what you just said earlier? Right.
Keeps you safe.
Right. It doesn't. You don't have to be afraid to be safe, but if you're going to choose to feel fear, then you want it to be used in a way that's helpful to you.
Right.
You know, in other words, there was a point in my life I needed to be afraid. As a little kid, I needed to be afraid of being hit by a car, so to speak. Like I thought I had to be afraid not to go out in front of a car, right? Now, I just have the awareness that cars and bodies don't mix. So I don't have to be afraid not to walk out in front of a car. So fear isn't a necessary motivator when you begin to wake up. You can have awarenesses that protect you that actually has nothing to do with fear. As a matter of fact, you can get more guidance when you're not afraid. So even though you use your fear in a positive way, it made you do something for yourself that you thought was helpful, what the Course is trying to get us to see in my perception of it is that love is an even greater protector and motivator than fear is. That that's part of the game, is to make us believe that fear is necessary for us to survive. And so if I believe fear is necessary for me to survive, then I'm going to create fear and reject love. I'm going to think love is dangerous. And if you think about how our world operates, you all know that's true. That you can tell a person you love them and they'll react with more fear to you than ever. That when someone says, I love you, that's when you go, oh Lord, because you know all the stuff you've ever gone through, most of it has been with what? Somebody who said what? I love you. Who was it that made the demands and expectations and scripts on you? The person who said, I love you. Who is the person that you're not even in communication with right now that you used to have the tightest relationships in the world? The person who said, I love you. So there's a part of us the Course says, that's afraid of love, but actually loves fear. So we'll defend fear quicker than we will love, because that's what we've learned. We've learned that fear is something we need to have in order to be okay. And the Course is radical. It's saying, no, love is what you need to have to be okay. Because if you were only radiating love, not real love, not made up love, if you were really radiating love, you wouldn't even attract the situations to fear. You wouldn't even attract the thing that you were trying to protect yourself. Fear would be the greatest protection of all. Because love would be the greatest protection of all, because your vibration would be such that you would not even have any danger around you. That's why I go for the love, because it could do more than any outside protective agency. You can have a vibration of love, you can be in touch with love, and love will protect you better than any policeman ever could. A loving person that's really loving is not going to attract a relationship that's kicking their butt all the time. You wouldn't even attract somebody that would attack you if you were truly loving yet. But you're working on it. And that's what I'm so proud of us for doing. We're some people that's saying, you know what? I've had enough. And I'm ready to do something different. I've reached my limit. I'm ready to have a different experience, even if it means me having to admit that I might not be right. So, would you acknowledge yourself for letting yourself at least hear it? You don't have to believe it, but at least hear it. I appreciate y'all so much. Okay, so there's a quick little thing I'm going to do to end it. We're going to do the love offering now. Thank you for sharing. Like the language analogy. Yeah, you're speaking a different, the Course teaches that we're speaking a different language from the language of love, real love. I keep saying real love. Because a lot of times people say, well, I'm a real loving person and stuff happens to you. I'm talking about real love. When you hit real love, you'll be safe. You're doing practice love. You're doing I want to be loving. You're doing I'm being a really nice person because nobody's upset me right now. Okay, that's not the real deal. You know, I'm here for you because you're acting right now. That's not the real love. I'm talking about the real deal. It's so real, I don't even know what it is. I just know I want it. That's how real it is to me. which is deep. And that's what I believe each and every one of you deserve. I really do. Even if you don't. And since I don't know why you don't think you deserve it, in other words, I don't know what you're telling yourself to make you think you don't deserve pure love, that's really an advantage. That I don't know your story. I don't know what you think you've done. I don't know who you think you've hurt. That's great. That's wonderful. You know how I know it's not real? Because I don't know about it until you tell me. How do I know it's not present in this moment? Because unless you tell me, I don't know what you hate yourself about. That's how you know it's in your head. Nobody else in this room knows about it but you. That's how you know it's made up. Nobody else knows about how you feel about yourself but you. That's how you know it's made up. That's deep, isn't it? But then I'm going to see what I think about myself coming back to me in my world. But the people outside of me don't even see what I'm thinking about myself or my world. I don't see either one of those with any of y'all. I don't see what you think about yourself right now, and I don't see what you see in your personal world right now.
That's good.
Right. That's great, which means that it's made up. The Course says one of the ways you can always tell something real from something unreal is that if it's real, it's true for everybody. If it's unreal, it's individualized consciousness. So anytime anybody tells me anything about the individual anything, I know that's the illusion. Something that they're dealing with that they're personally making up. But all of us need love. All of us need connection and oneness. I don't care what you believe about yourself. If the air was sucked out of this room right now, pretty much all the bodies would fall on the floor, regardless of what you believe about yourself. At the real level, we are completely connected at the real level. Whatever this one thing is that all of us are breathing, that's keeping us alive, that's the oneness. That's God. That's the life force. The rest of the stuff it's a story. It's just your story, Earl. Earl, it's your story. All right. So here's the last prayer that I want to give you before we walk out into the night or the day, or whatever the heck it is. And just remember, if all else fails, I say it all the time. Don't forget, you're cute. So you can make it if you just don't talk too much. Everything will be all right. Because we know in the world it's about how you look. It's all. How you think people spend more time and more energy on their appearance than anything else? Because they already know at the level of the world, it's what things look like that attract people. Wow. So here it is. Here's the thought. There is nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. It says this idea states a fact. But it's not a fact to those who believe in illusions. But illusions are not facts. False ideas are not facts. In truth, there is nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. It's very easy to recognize that there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. But it's very difficult to recognize that there's nothing to fear for those who want their fears to be true. If you want your fears to be true, it'll be hard to recognize there's nothing to fear. You're going to say this frequently. Just say this simple exercise. Exercise number 48, which is there is nothing to fear. It says, merely repeat the idea as often as possible. Merely repeat the ideas as often as possible. I always do things to rhythm and music because when I do that, it's easier for me to remember it and make it a part of myself when I get my body involved and when I just say something in a dry, intellectual way. That's why I do this stuff the way I do it. Use the idea with your eyes open at any time and in any situation. Use the idea. What is the idea? Who can tell me the idea? There is nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear. Okay, take a breath. So use it when, in any time, in any situation. Anytime you can, take a moment or two whenever possible to close your eyes. He says close your eyes whenever possible and repeat the idea slowly to yourself. There is nothing to fear. See, slowly to yourself several times. Now, this is my favorite line. It says it's particularly important that you use this idea immediately It's particularly important that you use the idea there's nothing to fear immediately. It's particularly important that you use the idea there's nothing to fear immediately. Should anything disturb your peace of mind, you hear that? Should anything disturb your peace of mind, it's important that you use the idea immediately. If anything disturbs your peace of mind, it's important that you use the idea immediately. See, that's learning the language. That's the language. That's what the Course is saying. That's why when you say stuff like, well, I'm just going to give it to God. What does that mean? Well, giving it to God would mean me saying there's nothing to fear very frequently with my eyes open, with my eyes closed. Saying that I'm listening to God would mean that I would use this thought as soon as I got disturbed about anything. See the difference? And I got very specific instructions I'm being told about what to do. The last paragraph says, the presence of fear is a sure sign that you are trusting in your own strength. The presence of fear is a sure sign that you are trusting in your own strength. So that means if I have any kind of fear and anxiety, let's say about the trip that I'm getting ready to make, that means that I'm trying to take care of myself. I'm trusting in what Earl can do to make sure everything goes all right on his trip. I'm trying to see what Earl can do to make everything go all right in his world without God. So whenever you are experiencing fear, it just means, according to this, you're just trusting in your own ego. You're just trusting in your own little individual strength separate from the strength of God. If you're afraid right now, you're trusting in your own strength separate from the strength of God. If you're afraid right now, upset right now about anything, it just means you're trusting in your own strength and not in God's. The God within you, the God surrounding you. I'm not talking about a man. I'm not talking about somebody in the sky. I'm not talking about that. The awareness that there is nothing to fear shows that somewhere in your mind, though not necessarily in a place you recognize as yet, you have remembered God. So wherever you are not feeling afraid, whatever area of your life you're not feeling afraid, whatever area you feel peace in, the Course says, whether you realize it or not, that's the area where you have remembered the truth. That's the area where you're practicing love. That's the area where you're practicing peace. So there are those areas of your life that you're feeling pretty satisfied, pretty loving, pretty cooled out. That's the area that you are speaking French. That's where you are being loving. That's where you truly are seeing things correctly. So really the trick is to take that same attitude that I got in the areas that are working. I need to take that attitude and move it on over into the areas that I think are not working. But you can be sure the area of conflict that you haven't been able to handle, that's the area you're trying to handle alone. That's the area that you're trying to figure it all out on your own. Even if you think you're studying the Course, it's just still you trying to figure out how to use the Course your own way. On your own. And sometimes the ego fools people like that. It's like, oh, you mean you still got the problem and you've been studying, Earl? Well, you still haven't been following the guidance. But you're innocent and you're cute and boy, can you dance. So the last step of the statement says, you have remembered God. Now what does that mean? You've let God's strength take the place of your weakness. I let God's strength take the place of my weakness. I let God's strength take the place of my weakness. I let God's strength take the place of my weakness. I let God's strength take the place of my weakness. And the instant you are willing to do this, he says, the instant that you're willing to do this, let God's strength take the place of your weakness. That lesson says, if you were willing to do that, then there is indeed nothing to fear. If I'm really letting the truth take the place of my weakness, I'm really practicing my path. So I implore you, if you don't hear anything else I said tonight, get a path that turns you on. Get a path that turns you. Get off the path that you don't have any kind of juice for. Stop reading the books that don't motivate you. Don't make it just another intellectual thing where you're just gathering a bunch of information. You know why? Because your ego, the part of you that doesn't love you, it will take all of the stuff that you're studying and then crucify you with it, telling you all the ways you're not doing it, how you ought to be further along, how you ought to be doing more, how you ought to be smarter. So the more information you give yourself that you don't use, it becomes actually a burden. So stop just collecting information. If you're not going to do it, back off a minute. Give yourself a break. But get the path that moves you and grooves you. All right? All right? Appreciate y'all. Thank you for helping me remember. You're so blessed. And remember what? There is nothing to fear.
love it.